Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Nick Kanoki, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm very excited for our conversation with Moshe Nelson, a partner at Guidehouse, an ALN Senior Fellow, and just recently a new board member of our Board of Directors. Before we get to Moshe, we want to thank our Platinum Organizational member, Kimon Onuma's Onuma System. He is next week's Thursday at 3, so stay tuned for that. And we also want to thank our ALN patron members and our other organizational members, new Guidehouse especially, and more. So please reach out if you're interested in working with us, and we can talk more about that. And then one more event to mention upcoming is next week's Earl Jackson and Kyle Wedberg, and they are meeting as part of our ALN Cities and Places Asset Leadership Board, continuation of a recent webinar. And so look forward to that. And then if you're out there watching today, we would love to hear from you. So send any comments, questions, feedback to the chat, or you can use the Q&A function of this Zoom webinar. Mike Bordenero, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Nick. How are things in Lander, Wyoming?
Nice rainy day here, which is unusual, but it is spring.
Yep, need that precipitation. So we're so happy to have Moshe Nelson as a ALN board member. You have known him before as an ALN senior fellow and author of white papers, the leader of our national asset leadership strategy and the strategic asset leadership structures, and just a very powerful force for the ALN. And we were so happy to have him unanimously approved as an ALN board member. Welcome to the club.
All right, thanks so much, Mike, and thanks to ALN for voting me in as a board member. Such an incredible organization that makes a massive impact on not just asset management, but all of the constituents that benefit from the value of those assets. So we've done a lot of fun things over the past few years, from writing thought leadership papers that got picked up by major news organizations like Bloomberg, to helping influence legislation and really get our mind out there on important issues affecting really national asset management. So thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Very glad to have you in this formal role. You've been a great contributor. So what kind of things do you see or would like to do? We've got a very informal structure. We hear all the time, oh, you're not like many organizations. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. It's just how we approach. Jim Dieter, the CEO and founder, has always said we're about impact. So that was very good to hear you say that, we're having that impact. What areas do you think we can be more impactful?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I think is the magic to ALN is that it creates a medium for really addressing some of the biggest challenges affecting asset management, infrastructure, and the population today. I mean, the scope is not limited to a particular city government or state government or even federal. And we tackle major issues that are affecting global crises like the war in Ukraine, where just having discussions and thought leadership around that brought together a group which affected change on the ground. It just absolutely incredible. So really understanding what this medium can have to bring people together around the most important issues and provide insights that are actionable and result in helping people and helping organizations. So that's what I'm most excited about at the macro level. I think over the next year, when we can talk about some of the details, we're going to be really driving towards improvement of infrastructure, social justice issues, some of just the general blocking and tackling of good asset management, whether that's in the federal or state governments, how that occurs, whether it's data-enabled, technology-enabled strategy in practice. I mean, these are some of the major topics that we're going to have to address over the next year.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to your support on that. And one of the things that Jim Dieter has recently said is we've been talking about asset management as a structured, ISO 55000 as a structured approach to asset management. People kind of freaked out about the word system. So we were getting good traction with the word structure. People can get their minds around that. And now we're going to start talking about governance.
Sure.
That a governance approach to asset management that really help people understand that it's a leadership issue. Because when you talk about governance of asset management, we're not talking about filter changes in oil pressures and things like that. We're talking about how everything is working together.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. And it's funny because my mind immediately goes to systems thinking, which
that's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah.
Right. I get that. And it could be that's hard to essentially grasp. So then whittling that down a bit to a structure or framework that is essentially has parameters that you can work within, very defined within ISO 55000. And then ultimately, the implementation of this, right, which is the governance. At the end of the day, asset leaders can only govern. And what does that mean? That means control in information flows, accountability, control and influence, and resourcing, right? And all of those, the elements of good governance are encapsulated in, the structure of, say, ISO 55000 around performance management, around risk management, well, and first and foremost, strategy, strategic communications, and then, buying and other elements of 55,000 that makes sense. So I think when you talk about governance, I really go to that's implementation. And then, what are the outputs of that governance and that implementation, which is the value, right?
Yes.
Ultimately, all of those elements are articulating the value of your asset, whether that's helping to execute the mission and enable, the law enforcement community to do their jobs effectively with all the resources they need, whether that's body-worn cameras or that's sensors to, identify intrusion. Those all roll up to governance and good asset management principles.
So it's great to talk about what the ALN is up to and how we can continue having the impact, but we do that through the input from our members, and separate from working to have you be named a board member. We were also working to have the new company where you're at, Guidehouse, become an organizational member. And those are separate items. You were a board member before we got the email saying that there is interest in the membership. So just want to make sure that that's clear. But Grant Thornton's federal consulting was acquired by Guidehouse, and you are now a partner at Guidehouse. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really, really, really big, exciting change there, and to help our fellow members understand what that is, right? So Grant Thornton Public Sector in whole, which included a federal and state and local practice, was acquired by Guidehouse, and we merged in like a puzzle piece into a larger Guidehouse family, and we essentially went from around 1,200 people, within that public sector practice to a firm indexed on really our clients, the clients that we serve in an advisory capacity. So we're now 17,000 as part of the Guidehouse family, focused on the commercial sector and then the public sector, and it's nearly evenly split. So we're now a part of the larger Guidehouse family, and extremely excited about all of that just capability and innovation that's focused directly on our customers, which are the consulting world and advisory world in the commercial and public sector. And then to take it a step further of where I reside, so I sit within our defense and security segment. And defense and security includes all, you would imagine, DoD, Intel, as well as Department of State, DHS, USAID, and a few other supplementary agencies. And, my job is to, help drive, solutions and capabilities across that environment. Spend a significant amount of time within the Department of State and Homeland Security doing that. So excited to be a part of this new organization and really be able to magnify a lot of what we were doing in the past with a lot more tools and capabilities.
Excellent. So Nick has checked out your website and has put a link there. And not only is he saying that it's a very cool website, when he was talking with us, he was very impressed. So congratulations on that. And then, separate from everything, I did check out Guidehouse's website, and this week we had featured one of the articles that was published there. And so we're really looking forward to the ability to amplify and learn from what you're doing at Guidehouse.
Excellent.
So,
yeah.
So you had mentioned some things that has happened, because this has been about 6 months.
Yeah, time flies. It was October 1st that we transitioned over.
Even more, 8 months. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things you had said is there's an identification of international megatrends that Guidehouse has done, and that could definitely influence and help us at the Asset Leadership Network. What are you seeing in terms of megatrends around the world?
That's a great question, and it goes back to the excitement of being in an organization that's focusing on the biggest challenges and trends that are affecting our client base, and that's both commercial and public sector. So many of these, I think all of these trends are relevant to our asset management community, and what I'm going to try to do is make that connection. Some of them will be very obvious, and then some of them I think we can talk a little bit about. So the first one was extraordinary wave of global investments in infrastructure, resiliency, and communities. The IRA that was passed by Congress, and the amount of funding that was essentially brought to the United States under the Biden administration to drive greater investment and improvement in infrastructure has essentially changed the focus of where our country is focusing resources, and can enable more effective community development, resiliency from pandemics, as well as natural disasters, and quite frankly, where the asset management community aligns best. So this first trend is nothing new to the asset management community, but essentially highlights areas of focus and development where other communities may be impacted. So that's the first one. The second is around accelerated innovation and modernizing technology platforms and solutions. So if you're not hearing about ChatGPT or AI or quantum computing, I don't know what planet you live on. And these topics are just permeating the news. They are significantly impacting our global relationships, the investment and actions around the world, right? There's a race today to quantum computing, between the United States and China. And right now there's significant policies and strategy with essentially fortifying resource acquisition, supply chains, relationships across the South Pacific and other areas. So that it really is it's a topic that at the macro level is affecting how the United States operates, and ALN is a global network, so I'd say the United States operates and others, how alliances are made, with countries throughout the world, as well as how we're affected day to day. The technology and infrastructure that's utilized for good strategic asset management. And we've talked about over the years, asset management is not a technology system. Technology enables an asset management, proper utilization, proper life cycle planning, budgeting, and management. But now more than ever, we're in a place of change, competition for technological resources, and then at the precipice for advancement that will change all of our lives and the way that we work in quantum computing and AI. So that is the second one.
Well, before we go on to anything else, I want to talk a little bit here. The speed at which these changes are occurring, I think, will be as important to address as the actual changes. We're seeing that in AI already. And the ALN had a BIM storm with our platinum member, Onuma, and we started looking into that. Well, we're listed on his next presentation, which will be next Friday in Japan. And the amount of AI achievement that has occurred from earlier in the year to now is, I can't even keep up with it. So I know that part of the asset management that we'll have to do is the human experience and how we can help people understand that they are still valuable and needed, and that what this explosion of tools are doing is freeing them up from mundane tasks and allowing them to focus more on what they really love doing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And we are exploring this. So we're going to continue working with Onuma system, and we invite Guidehouse and other ALN members to work with him on these scenarios, these practice scenarios where we can make mistakes and get familiar in a virtual world that doesn't matter if things go wrong. So look forward to us to be helping in that regard.
Yeah, always fun and fascinating to do some BIM work with Kimon and the Onuma systems. I'm always amazed at the results that come together when you have different perspectives, meeting together through a technology-enabled environment.
Yeah, you can go into GPT and say, I've got this many cars, I've got this many buildings, I've got this many people. Give me a strategic asset management plan for my set of assets. And it comes back with things that are surprisingly close to what's real. They need to be edited, but anyway, sorry, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we should all be.
All right, so any other mega trends?
Yeah, so let's hit the third one. Growing proliferation of geopolitical risks, threats, and security vulnerabilities. So I was alluding to this a second ago when talking about quantum computing and the race for resources between global superpowers, right? The war in Ukraine essentially was a catalyst for change throughout the world and a changing global order. So how are these major events and restructuring of global order going to impact the, I'll just say, asset management community, and how are we are going to plan modernization efforts, life cycle planning, supply chain of our assets, inventory management, as well as technological growth and investment when we're looking at possible risks that can occur as a result of clone parts, right, that come into highly sensitive infrastructure, let's say DoD, as a result of essentially a risky supply chain that has come about through, changes to overall trade direction because of a war, right? So these are all concepts and risks that need to be managed and considered when thinking about global change, pandemics, changing world order, and and how we manage our day-to-day assets and vulnerabilities. So that was the just some elements of the third megatrend. Fourth is on evolving post-pandemic workforce dynamics, skilled gaps, and labor shortages. Yeah, it's so fascinating to me that we have rising interest rates within the United States.
No, they're actually going down now.
Well, right. We've had changing interest rates. We've had prospects of a recession ongoing for the past couple of years, as well as shortages of labor in a workforce. It's just this unique set of elements that at times do not make sense in a world that has continuously evolved through. Really, it's a post-pandemic world. So how are we thinking through what this workforce looks like in the future? How are we more effectively planning for the asset management leadership, the maintenance, the acquisition, all of the various elements that come into play when it comes to life cycle asset management, not just for the short term, but for the long term. So you're really thinking about those dynamics, in addition to the changes that we've had to the work environment, where there's a pendulum swinging back with people actually coming back into the office and really thriving on the relationships, the synergies that occur through in-person consultation, while balancing the benefits of a remote environment and the ability to be in 7 places at once, right? Through technology enablement and business acumen that have been developed. So these are trends that we're developing strategies on, that we're helping people understand how to navigate effectively to make their companies or organizations successful. And then the last part of this, and we've talked about it a bit, is the exponential growth of data leading to partnerships and data ecosystems that change decision-making, value, and growth possibilities. So we talked about technology earlier on, but data are the source of essentially the gasoline that makes everything run, right? So how is data effectively managed? Gosh, I remember 2.5 years ago when we were talking about data attributes of a national asset leadership strategy and how we're grouping those effectively to have downstream management of assets. So that it's a language that is necessary in order to modernize, to effectively manage assets throughout the entire life cycle process, and will only continue to be important from a standardization perspective, enterprise data management perspective, and the analytics perspective. That plays into AI and quantum computing, because without the proper data, you can't essentially reach it. So that was the last of the megatrends there.
Oh, thank you for sharing those. And then, boy, the ALN board has a lot to address. But it's the ability to learn from you and our other board members to help us know what to focus on in our limited amount of resources and activities. We, like you said, we tend to have a good impact when we do focus. So is there anything of these megatrends that you think will be a good thing for the ALN board to kind of single out?
Yeah, well, so much of the conversation that we have, domestically is really around the general blocking and tackling, right? Do we have the effective organizational structure to be able to manage assets throughout their entire life cycle and ultimately achieve value that we're trying to achieve, whether that's mission execution or the enhancing the taxpayer dollar, right? That all of those elements are, essentially part of this asset management ecosystem. So from the general blocking and tackling, we think about people, process, and technology, organizational alignment, strategic alignment, effective systems in place and infrastructure to be able to manage assets, and then the training and development so that people can not only do their day job, but understand how do you drive organizations into the future. And that's really the place that we need to be, because for general blocking and tackling, you can get from a standard and ASTM standard and know how to do your job. But it's how do you drive the organization in the future to be able to modernize, to get a greater technological enablement, better data management and effectiveness and analytics, and what will the result be, right? And that's the value. Driving lower costs for the organization, creating greater resiliency, right, in the security environment, in the diplomacy environment, areas that are close to home for me, by having a resilient supply chain. And all of these factors essentially come into play. Sparing of parts, supply chain risk management, trusted suppliers, right? These are all elements that come together for overarching lifecycle asset management.
Well, this is must be exciting for you. Do you see things at Guidehouse that you're able to do that you weren't able to before? Is there some things that you're excited about there?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. There's, when we come over, there's not just a lot of great toys here when it comes to, technology enabled systems and processes, but expertise that we didn't have at our fingertips previously, just as a result of this organization. So deep expertise in AI and machine learning, significant expertise in the sustainability realm, where we're doing energy modernization and cutting edge technology and enablement that was only a bit of a dream in the past. Right. The things we talked about, right, when we were talking about port distribution in Ukraine, the use of hydrogen. I mean, there are expertise, that I can knock on the door of and speak to, which is just incredible.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to putting together the showcase programs and working on white papers with Guidehouse. You've got an excellent team that I've already began the initiation with, and look forward to seeing how Guidehouse can help us bring out the rapid deployment of best practices throughout the federal government and state and local government. And then hopefully companies see, hey, if our state and local governments are getting better, how is that happening? And we can, just really expand on that. So thank you for the Guidehouse membership, and appreciate you willing to be a volunteer board member for the Asset Leadership Network, and are excited to be doing some more good work with you.
Me too, Mike. Thank you again for for the trust and for bringing me on as a board member. And the Guidehouse partnership is excited to get involved and do good work.
Excellent. So Nick, if you can wrap us up.
Yeah, of course. Awesome talking with you, Moshe. Really appreciate your time here today, and everyone as well. And next week we have Kimono Numa with a Numa system on ALN Thursday at 3. So be here. We'll see you here next week. And we're going to talk about another upcoming event with Kimono in just a moment. I also just want to thank our other patron members and all our organizational members, especially Guidehouse. And if you're out there thinking maybe we could work together, please reach out. We would love to talk to you and figure out what we can do together. And just plug this event next Tuesday, the ALN Cities and Places Board or Asset Leadership Board and Earl Jackson and Kyle Wedberg will be featured, as well as the co-chairs from Jacobs, Jennifer Mims, and Claude Tankersley. And the other event, I think I should share just a moment from Kimon's website, a charrette for architects and machines, another event featuring the power of ChatGPT and meshing that with architectures, engineers, and construction and design. So really a lot of exciting upcoming stuff, and we hope to see you all there.
Thank you, Nick. And once again, Moshe, thank you so much. Would you like to make any closing statement?
I think we covered it. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Very excited.
And
All right.
thank you to our audience, and we'll see you all next week.